Welcome to Realms of the Otherworld, Episode 9, Alcatraz. Alcatraz, located offshore of San Francisco, California, is one of the most daunting and petrifying places around. Originally home to only seabirds, Alcatraz was spotted by Spanish explorer Lieutenant Juan Manuel de Ayala in 1775. He named the island Isla de los Alcatraces, Island of the Pelicans. The Miwok Indians that inhabited the area, soon to be California, thought the island was inhabited by evil spirits. Alcatraz has had a long reputation for being a very malevolent place. In 1848, the gold rush drew people into California, including to San Francisco. By 1950, the population grew from 300 to 3,000. The area now badly needed protection, so the state reserved the lands around San Francisco Bay for military use. Alcatraz was declared a military reservation in 1850, and in 1853 it was called Fort Alcatraz. It was the most powerful of the Pacific Coast defenses during the Civil War. Steep walls, weapons, and surrounded by the ocean, it was the perfect defense. Housed there were also prisoners of war and local civilians arrested for treason. In addition, there were American Indian prisoners held there from the westward expansion. In 1899 was the Spanish-American War. Alcatraz became crowded with 441 prisoners. In 1907, the prison was rebuilt using cinder block on top of the old citadel and the basement area. It was clear that the future of Alcatraz was to be a prison. By 1912, they had built 600 cells. In 1915, Alcatraz became a U.S. disciplinary barrack, a minimum security prison that focused on rehabilitation and education. In 1933, the Army decided to stop using Alcatraz due to the high cost of getting supplies to the island. In 1934, the island became a high-security federal penitentiary. The 1930s were host to many criminals and gang activity. Alcatraz was for the worst of the worst. The isolation and remoteness made it the perfect place for these men. The government hired only the best warden for the job, James A. Johnston. Alcatraz was the highest security prison at the time. There was no escape. It loomed as a threat to criminals. The staff was trained to a T. There was only one man per cell. There were strict routines, procedures, and programs to monitor the prisoners. Inmates did outnumber the staff by 4 to 1, so this highly organized system was very necessary. The most notorious prisoners at Alcatraz were Al Scarface Capone, kingpin of the Chicago underworld during the 1920s, kidnapper George Machine Gun Kelly, bank robber Floyd Hamilton, who was partners with Bonnie and Clyde, Arthur Doc Barker, and L.V. Creepy Carpus, member of the Ma Barker gang. Roy Gardner was an Old West train robber, and Robert Birdman Stroud. Stroud was a homicidal sociopath whom one longtime Alcatraz officer said was like Jekyll and Hyde. Out of all the years from 1934 to 63, there were only a few unsuccessful attempts at escaping from Alcatraz. 14 attempts in all involving 36 inmates, 23 were captured, 7 killed, and at least 3 drowned, and 5 were unaccounted for. In one case in 1946, 6 inmates overpowered a guard and got his keys. Then they got into the gun area. They took some of the officers hostage and caused a huge gun battle that lasted for 2 days before officers and U.S. Marines retook the cell house. Officers Harold Stites, William Miller, and 3 inmates were killed during the escape gone wrong. The 3 inmates that lived were retried for murder. After their convictions, they tried to escape again. 2 were executed and 1 sentenced to 99 years in prison. In 1962, 3 inmates, John Anglin, Clarence Anglin, and Frank Morris, broke out. They spent months making drills and tools from objects stolen from the kitchen and other areas. They made holes in the utility corridors behind the cell walls, built rubber rafts from raincoats, and made fake heads out of toilet paper, cardboard, cement chips, and human hair to make it look like they were sleeping in bed. Then they crawled through the holes, climbed up the pipes in the corridor to the roof with their rafts and paddles, and then they got into the ocean. They were never found. There were no bodily remains, no evidence found in their hometowns, no evidence at all that they were still alive. But one ship did see a body floating in the ocean that night, but the body sank. In 1863, the federal prison closed because it was too expensive to run due to all of the supplies having to be shipped and due to the fact that the sea air was deteriorating the prison so much that it was falling apart. It was just too much trouble keeping it running. American Indians occupied the island in 1964 and from 1969 to 1971. They claimed it as Indian land in a publicized protest on the plight of the American Indians. In 1972, the island became a part of the National Park Service and opened to the public in 1973. It is one of the most popular tourist destinations in the Bay Area. One can imagine that with such a diverse history, there may be unusual otherworldly activity on Alcatraz. According to research by Wikipedia, E. Floyd said, "Almost every guard and official who served there until it was shut down by Attorney General Robert Kennedy in early 1960 experienced something out of the ordinary." Alcatraz is supposedly haunted by the ghosts of Native American prisoners and officials who died on the land during the Civil War and military time. Inmates and guards over the years have heard whispering in the night, moaning, and the clanking of chains from empty cells. They also saw floating blue lights and figures. Many guards at first did not believe in the hauntings, but then they too began to have experiences. They experienced cold spots, touching, and heard crying. Many saw prisoners in garb from the military times walking in the halls and disappearing. Groups of Native American prisoners also have been seen. Phantom gunfire and cannon blasts are heard, and fire alarms are set off. Cell doors are heard moving in the night when they're locked. Doors open on their own, and a harmonica is heard. Also, a phantom lighthouse has been seen in the bay. The warden's house is said to be haunted. Guards saw a man in a gray suit and a brimmed hat with mutton chops at a party. The room was icy cold, and the fire in the Ben Franklin stove mysteriously went out. A former prisoner turned guide swore Alcatraz was haunted. He felt it when he was a prisoner. He felt like he was being watched. He also believes he saw a former dead prison mate while giving a tour years later. More recently, visitors and rangers have heard the clanging sounds, screams, and also crying in the prison. Footsteps and moaning are common in A and B blocks. A door swings open in C block. D block has some of the most haunted cells. Voices are heard in cells 11, 12, and 13. Cell 14 is claimed to be the most haunted and icy cold. This is where, in 1940, a prisoner screamed all night that a thing with the red eyes was trying to kill him, and he was found the next morning with bulging eyes, a purple face, and marks on his neck. Years later, another inmate said that Cell 14 damaged him so much that it caused him to stab another prisoner. Many have heard banjo music playing in the shower area, and they say this is where Al Capone practiced his banjo. People also feel cold chills here and feel fingers on the back of their neck. In the hospital, voices are heard. George Machine Gun Kelly has been seen in the church, and Alvin Creepy Carpus is said to haunt the prison bakery and kitchen. Canaries sing in the cell of Robert Stroud, even though he had no canaries at this prison. He has also been seen reading on his bed. In 1984, a psychic named Sylvia Brown visited the prison and sensed a troublemaking ghost named Butcher Malkowitz, a prisoner that was killed by another inmate in the laundry room. On a 1990s episode of the show Sightings, a psychic, Peter James, visits Alcatraz and he senses in a certain area the spirits of guards taken hostage in a cell, and he tracks down an area in a utility hallway where prisoners had been killed. This is reflective of the 1946 blastout, where 3 guards were taken hostage and 2 killed, and 3 prisoners shot. Clanging noises are heard in the cell, but no one is to be found. These are just some of the reports of otherworldly activity that occurs at the terrifying Alcatraz Island. The long history of a Civil War defense area, military prison, high-security federal prison, and the site of a Native American protest seems to have led to an island full of paranormal energies and perhaps looming spirits of the dead. Do you dare take a tour of Alcatraz? Information on the national park and transportation ferries are below. Thank you for watching another episode of Realms of the Otherworld. Please hit the subscribe button and ring that notification bell so that you don't miss any new videos. And share. Hey, and on a new note, since it will take a long time to get my channel monetized, I would love for you to come over to my Patreon website to help fund these wondrous videos. It takes me a good 10 to 12 hours to make each video, and although I would love to just do this for free, it would be super great to get paid, especially since my jobs are at a standstill due to the pandemic. So please visit my Patreon page to help me out. Multiple donation choices are available. Thank you. Have a good evening. Take care.